All right, everybody, how are we doing today? Steve Mingleco, Final Web Design, coming at you with another new video. Today's is not so much a tutorial, but more I just want to kind of go over web development in 2021, what's happening, what to expect, some of the popular technologies and skills you should have. So let's get started. Basically, in 2021, again, the world has gotten a lot more remote. Everything is going more remote, whether it's schools, businesses, purchases and sales. Everything is going digital. So getting into this field is really going to be beneficial going forward in 2021. So let's start off with some of the most popular technologies that are building a lot of these new websites and these new businesses. And basically, I want to just start with WordPress. WordPress is clearly the number one CMS platform. It's continued to evolve. It continues to grow. You can use it on mobiles. You can use it on desktops. You can include e-commerce with it. And it's really just become the number one platform, powering like 70-80% of websites right now is WordPress. It's also open source, so you won't have any problem finding a free platform with it. You do not need to spend anything. I have a bunch of tutorials here on the website down here that go over WordPress, how to install it, how to get it set up, how to use other plugins and features, how to turn it into an e-commerce store, how to incorporate themes. So just a lot of information out there right now as far as WordPress and how it's used. Now some of the other ones, and I would say they're all pretty far seconds and thirds, is going to be Joomla, which I personally love Joomla. But again, it's just not taking over the market share that something like WordPress is. You have Drupal, which is more, application and a little more customization. You can customize it more than you can something like WordPress. And then you also have like a Magento, which is really, I think it's been bought now by Adobe, so it's continuing to get that support behind it. But all these platforms are open source, so you're able to get them free of charge if you know how to get them set up and installed on your computer. So just taking a quick look, obviously Joomla, very popular. There's a few tutorials here you can also follow if you're interested in learning more about Joomla. Drupal, which is, you'll find more corporations and schools, like high-level universities and stuff, using Drupal because it has more security features and more of an application-based CMS. And then you also have Magento, which is more of an e-commerce CMS. And again, it's recently been bought by Adobe. So it's continued to get that support that a lot of these other open source, like, community built platforms don't have, where a company like Adobe can clearly sponsor a lot of those systems. So I'm not going to go over all the e-commerce. We have a lot of different e-commerce plugins right now. You obviously have WooCommerce with WordPress, which is super popular. You can plug that into your WordPress CMS, and then you're given the ability to access, purchases, sales, incorporating PayPal's and credit card payment gateways. So it's a really powerful CMS. It is free of charge also, WooCommerce. Then if you're using Joomla, you'll usually use something like VirtueMart, which is another open source free plugin you can find. Also has a lot of that inventory management features, credit card features, PayPal type features. Then you can go with the whole platform with these platforms that are made just for e-commerce, such as like a Shopify or a PrestaShop. And basically those have become more popular. Now you are going to find that they have monthly subscription charges behind them, usually about like $100-$200 a month. So they're not open source, but you do get all the support with a company like that, where they're going to help you, walk you through installing themes and your whole store yourself. Granted, you have the inventory and you have the manufacturing way of getting the products out. I won't go over Hika Shop, I won't go over PayPal, and I won't go over AuthorizeNet, but they're all just basically different ways to accept payments within your e-commerce shop. So why don't we start at front end? Front end is basically where we are now as far as what a front of your website looks like, what the user interacts with, the UI, the UX, the whole interactions with the user that's visiting your site. And obviously the most popular technologies here are HTML, which has been around forever. It's been around 20, 30 years now. CSS, which is going to be the design and the look of the site, and then JavaScript, which is a lot of the functionality. So if you want like pop-ups or you want sliders, things like that are usually going to be built with a JavaScript. And HTML is really easy to learn. It doesn't take a lot, but today's websites have become so integrated with the front end that it's become increasingly hard to just build a website with just HTML. You're going to want all these bells and whistles that websites now have that are become a lot more interactive. So going into the JavaScript front-end frameworks, you have the big ones, which are basically Angular, React, and then Vue.js. Vue.js is the newest one. Angular is supported by Google, and React is supported by Facebook. But these are really for application development. So if you need a mobile application that's a hybrid for Android, for iOS, you can use these Angulars, Reacts. And what I personally find my favorite is Vue.js, which is, again, it's open source, it's new, it's not supported by Google or Facebook. However, it is the newest, and it's kind of combined the best features of both React and Angular. So if you are getting into front-end development, which I suggest everybody does, Vue.js is my personal favorite. React is where a lot of the corporations are at. So a lot of the big medical companies and a lot of the big, the Facebook's built with React, Twitter's built with React, I believe. So a lot of those are being built with the whole React framework, and it's very popular. Tons of jobs out there with React if you're looking to get into the React. So that's just kind of the front end. We'll go in here to the back end. And as you can see, we have Java, which has been around forever as well. It's a super hard language to learn. And it's also kind of getting outdated with something like Python, which is a lot newer and has a lot more functionality that people are looking for. It's not so hard to program. And then obviously you have your PHP, which is used with WordPress and all these CMSs like Joomla and such. So if you're getting into back end, and here's what I say right now, you really need to have a focus. You're either in front end or back end, because front end, it used to be that back end was more of the technical, difficult side to build. But now, again, with all these frameworks like Angular and Vue and React, front end has become increasingly complex, increasingly a lot of work. So if you are going to focus on one of these, I say, start off in one direction, do front end or do back end, but don't try to, overextend yourself, because it does get to be a lot of different things. Even though at the foundations of a programming language, it's all the same. It is a lot of different information, a lot of different routes you can take. And with back end, they've always said PHP wasn't going to be around, but hey, it is still here. It's still going strong. I don't see PHP going anywhere for a long time. Again, it is powering all these CMS platforms such as WordPress, which is a huge market. And PHP, it's not necessarily easy, but it's also not necessarily difficult to work with. And it has a lot of power that you just, a lot of these databases are using to make sure you can store data and to work the whole back end of your system. Now, obviously, Ruby, I'm not going to spend too much time on Ruby because Ruby is pretty much dead. It's been dead for about probably 10 years now. It came off strong, but again, these other frameworks have really taken over the requirements that a language like Ruby and Ruby on Rails provided. And I would say right now, the best language if you're going to get into backend is Python. Python is super powerful. It's used with a lot of like AI and a lot of analytical number crunching and things like that. It's also a lot easier language to learn than something like Java, which has become, it's a very complex, it's a very old language. So I would say if you're getting into backend, definitely stick with Python, PHP. You really can't go wrong. Those languages aren't going anywhere, and they will be around for a long time to come. And then if you go into just full stack, you got your front end, you got your back end, and basically you're combining these. So when you get into full stack, you're pretty much a senior developer at that stage. As you can see here, we have our JavaScript, our HTML, we have our Ruby, our Python, our Java, all these backend languages, and then you obviously have your databases where you're going to store your data you're taking, whether it's usernames, passwords, all this information with something like MySQL, which is a really popular database. It's been around forever. It's going to be around forever. Some of the newer ones like MongoDB. And I say if you are looking to get into, back end, you're obviously going to want to know some type of database system in 2021. So I would say MySQL is definitely the most used. Again, it's used with storing the data of all these CMSs like WordPress. And then there's obviously the MongoDB, which is more of an NoSQL backend, used more for application development and such. So that kind of brings me into my next point, which is like, where are we in 2021 and what's going to be the focal point if you do want to get into this industry? And what I would say is, like I've kind of just said, all these skills are important. Just try to stick with something that you're enjoying. Try to work on a few projects. If you can find yourself a position where you can learn a lot of these skills on the job, 9 to 5, whether it's just building like HTML emails for an email campaign or creating different small landing pages or small applications, it really helps to get yourself in the door where you can then spend your 9 to 5 or whatever hours working on these projects. And then with that being said too, all these jobs are going remote. When I started this 10 years ago, everybody was in-house. You would go in-house. There was very seldom that you would be working remote unless you were working with like a team overseas or a team in, most commonly India or Eastern Europe. That's very common because they do have a lot of good developers over in those parts of the world that are less, they're less income than a lot of the developers and stuff within the United States. And where should you be looking for some of these jobs? Well, I think entry level now is around $50,000. That's pretty normal for an annual salary if you are a new developer. However, if you're in these applications and you've been a senior type level, you can easily be looking at $45, $50, $55 an hour doing senior level development for these companies. And, I'm not just talking the Facebooks and the Microsofts and the Googles. I'm talking even like the healthcare industry, even like the education industry. So really know that your value is up there. Don't go with a position that's going to shortchange you if the workload is too high. But given that whole flexibility with remote development now, it really is a nice time to be in this industry because, you can, as you can see, come out and travel the world and go different places and keep your your skills growing, and also continue to find a job and a career that's moving. There's going to be more jobs in the future. There's going to be more jobs in 2021 than there was in 2020 than there was in 2019. And you also are learning a skill that's very applicable in today's world and will continue to be going forward. So with that being said, guys, I just wanted to kind of recap on where we are in 2021 as as programmers, as web developers, as application developers. And all I can say is if you guys do have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to get back with anything I can help reply to. And a like, a subscribe, that helps. And we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.